because the Army doesn't like the Zoom platform. They prefer MS Teams. But thank you very much, Sherry, for having me. And thank Jeanette for reaching out and asking. I'm always glad to talk about the programs. And also just welcome to Lillian for deciding to be part of the ESGR family that supports our service members and their families as they have military service that's tied in with their civilian jobs and their civilian life. So as Sherry said, I am Lieutenant Colonel Ann Willoughby. I am the Director of State Family Programs. So what that means is that I've got several different programs that fall underneath my umbrella. I have child and youth programming, resilience, risk reduction, suicide prevention, service member and family support, and the Yellow Ribbon Reintegration Program, and that's why I'm visiting with you today. So a Yellow Ribbon program, they call it Yellow Ribbon because there's, several hundred years ago, they used to use the yellow ribbon. The families, especially the spouses, would put a yellow ribbon onto their clothes to help everyone remember that they had someone who was serving that had gone away to serve. And so I would say the first one was like back in the 15 or 1600s, and it was the Navy. So it was the Navy spouses as their husband would go off, because back then women weren't officially serving. They were serving in other capacities, but that's where it comes from. And so twice a year, or for every unit that gets a notification that they're going to deploy, we have a Yellow Ribbon event. So it's a pre-Yellow Ribbon event and a post-Yellow Ribbon event. And so just as the names indicate, is that before the unit goes, and approximately it's 30 to 60 days before the unit actually leaves the state to go to their mobilization station, we have a big event, and it's called Yellow Ribbon, and we share all of the different resources that are available to service members and their families now that they are going to be on duty. So things that they're not aware of might be the TRICARE healthcare insurance, and then what help what help can they get if they need some respite care, if they're caring for someone, and many other things. But one of them that we always have, and we always have it on the because there's always problems ahead of time, and there's always problems after the unit comes back, is a brief from the employee support of the Guard and Reserve. So when your volunteers come to our events, we ask you to talk about what the law is, because oftentimes civilian employers, they don't know the law. And so they might be saying something to the citizen soldier that, hey, since you're leaving, I'm going to have to let you go, which we know is unlawful. So they can't fire them because of their military duty. But sometimes, our soldiers are young and they don't know that. And so this is a big education piece. Sometimes when the soldier is gone, and I keep saying soldier because I'm with the North Dakota Army National Guard, although the National Guard in North Dakota also encompasses the Air National Guard. But you probably will speak at some of those events for the Air National Guard as well. But so I'm saying Army because that's where I come from. But we might have a soldier that while they're deployed, the employer is really having a difficult time trying to get a temporary employee to come backfill. And so it's really difficult to say, hey, I need you just for a year until my other employee gets back from their deployment. Well, a lot of people don't want to take just a 1 year. And so sometimes they will they'll get a hold of the spouse, or they'll send an email to the soldier that says, hey, I got to let you go because I can't get anybody hired. So again, you are the person to help the family be reassured that they're not going to lose their job solely because of their military service. Now, if they were a terrible employee and they didn't tell their employer that, hey, I'm leaving, because we've had this, I've been in the Guard for a long time, and we've had soldiers not tell their employer till a week before they were going to go that, hey, I'm going to be gone for a year and there's nothing that you can do about it. And so you're also educating them there. That's why we try to have the Yellow Ribbon event about 60 days prior, because they should be letting their employer know is that, hey, I'm leaving. And so they can't just stick it to their employer and tell them like a day before they go and think that they're going to be fully protected, because they won't be. And of course, you're going to educate them about that. And so you're letting the family member and you're letting the service member know all of their rights and what their employer can and can't do in their employment rights. There's a Soldiers and Sailors Act, and what that involves. And then when the unit comes back, we have you come speak again, because that's when we usually have the post yellow ribbon event about 60 days, 30 to 60 days after they're back. We try to make it 60 days. But it all depends on what the commander of the unit wants. Make it 60 days because they've usually got about 30 days worth of leave that they have to use. And so they do not have to go back to their civilian job until after they've used all their military leave, because they're not officially off of their orders until they've used their leave. And so they go back and that's when you find out, or when the soldier will find out, that things aren't going so well with their employer. And so they might reach out to you. They'll probably have your card and remember that briefing that they had before they went. And hopefully they reach out to you before things get terrible at work. But we have had soldiers get fired, or we have had employers threaten firing and other not good things for their employment. But your volunteers coming to speak about it helps the soldier understand is that they're not going to lose their jobs just because they deploy. So, what are your questions?
That was very helpful. Like I said, I'm a brand new person. Jerry could probably echo, because he's our person that helps I never can say ombudsman. Never can say that word. What's interesting to me is I kept thinking yellow ribbon was, yeah, we're still going to go get together and hand out those yellow ribbons. So, and I always think of that song, Yellow Ribbon. Anyway, Jerry, did you have any comments to add?
Not really. That's a very important piece, I guess, in terms of educating everybody, to include the soldiers, and refresher on you, Sarah, because without that information, they take it upon themselves to make some decisions that aren't in their best interest. But North Dakota overall, and Arlen, you can add to this since you cover the West, but overall, North Dakota really has done a remarkable job over the years of educating not only the soldier but the employers. There are very few times now when I just had one a couple of days ago, call where one of the first things in the conversation I ask them, do you know what USERRA is? The federal law. And right now I probably am running 95 to 98% of the time, either the employer or the soldier will say yes. They may not fully understand it, but at least they are aware of it, and that they know the basics, the basic underlying pinnings and intent of the laws. And the yellow ribbon events are a big credit for that success and where we are with that, I believe. Arlen, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yellow ribbon events help out a lot. It helps to educate the service members, and seems like we have a lot less since we've been attending yellow ribbons and deployments or pre-deployments. We have a lot less phone calls.
Awesome.
I would just like to make a comment. The yellow ribbon, no, it's just not the soldier, it's the family, like Colonel Willoughby said. And so we do have a handout that we pre-stuff into. Colonel Willoughby, you guys put together like folder or something like that for an information on all the booths and presenters that are there.
Yes.
So in there.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Jeanette.
So in there, a lot of people don't know that the spouse can nominate their employer for a Patriot Award. So that's where that information gets pushed out as well, because I think a lot of times it's just the service member thinks that they are the only ones that can. But the spouse also deploys too, not deploys, but they're serving, taking all this extra stuff, and their employer feels it as well. So that's an opportunity to educate the spouses about that.
Jeanette, you made a great point. I didn't I don't think I was very clear about it, but at the yellow ribbons, every soldier is able to invite 2 individuals. We call them individuals. They don't necessarily have to be a spouse. They could be a significant other. They could be a brother, sister. They could be a best friend. Sadly, some of our soldiers, their parents have passed. And they are only child, and so it might be a best friend, but they can bring 2 designated individuals. We prefer, or we hope, that it's those people that are going to be managing things for them while they're gone. And so yes, there's civilians that are, the yellow ribbon is for the soldier and their designated individuals. The other thing that I wanted to bring up about ESGR, if you're not aware, is that we also see a lot of complaints when it's time for state active duty. And of course, this isn't a yellow ribbon, but it's a state active duty, because a soldier that goes on state active duty is not acting as a soldier. He actually becomes a state employee. And USERRA does not cover a soldier when they become a state employee for state active duty. And so I do believe that a few years ago, I think it was probably figured out either in 2009 or 2011, that that there was an agreement between civilian employers and soldiers, is that they would be okay with them going for maybe 3 weeks, but then after that, they really would need to go back to their civilian job, because that's difficult when the employer is saying, like, hey, I know it's flooding on the Red River, but I'm out here in Dickinson and I need my employee. And so I know that our representative you get very busy, and it's a very challenging thing for state active. So I think that's where all of your skills, conflict management come into play.
COVID was quite the emphasis over that. those years with a lot of the Guard being on from days and days and days.
And if I could add in a piece, I've had 2 conversations recently with aviation students here at UND. One's a prospective student, and one was my student last year and just got back from basic and AIT. The conversation I had with her was, she was like, oh yeah, I almost got fired while I was at Rydell because I was at Leonardwood for basic training and only had access to my phone once a week. I said, okay, take my card, and I'm going to make a trip over to have a conversation just to make sure that doesn't happen. Because despite her leaving and telling somebody she was leaving, it got lost in translation that she wasn't being unresponsive. She wasn't able to respond. Mm-hmm. So her boss has subsequently been moved to a position outside of that company. So I'm going to go over and find out whoever it is now to have that conversation. Then I have a prospective student coming in who doing post-secondary education in Minnesota. So she already went to basic training, came back, and is supposed to go to AIT in January, and is going to graduate high school early in December in order to facilitate AIT. So the question she had for me was like, well, do I have to tell my future employer when I interview that I may have to leave in January? I said, not only should you, I said, yes, absolutely. And they cannot deny you employment based on you having to go to AIT. So if you do run into that problem, here's my card, give me a call. So I've had that conversation. And then I talked to one of my recruiter friends who's up in Minot, used to work here at UND, had very minimal understanding of USERRA, and he's a staff sergeant who's going through OCS right now. So I found that as an opportunity to have a conversation with either recruiters or prospective soldiers of, you send somebody to basic and AIT, that counts, therefore they're protected under USERRA. And I know recruiters get a ton of information at the beginning, and young prospective soldiers probably aren't thinking about that aspect, but that's another opportunity where we can help educate some future service members of what their rights are under USERRA, so they're not concerned about losing their job while they're gone for basic and AIT, or hiding the fact that they're in the Guard or Reserve out of fear of not getting a job.
Great points. I think it could be beneficial to our new service members, whether it's air. They had a short brief from an ESGR volunteer while they're called, they're in the recruit training company. And so they haven't gone to basic training in AIT. They're just going to some drills, and they're helping them to get ready to go to basic training. That probably would be a really good place to help educate. And I can visit with our recruiting battalion here and see if that's something that she would be interested in. They probably do it once a quarter, I'm guessing, because they will have those soldiers usually for about 3 or 4 months before they'll go off to basic training. It gives them time to break in their boots, so it's not so miserable when you get down there. But I mean, it's a lot more than that. But yes, it's a great point there about not knowing your rights and what you can and shouldn't say to your employer. Yes.
One thing I'd like to add to this, coming from the public affairs perspective, but the way that things are presented could be kind of important. But what I always try to include in our messaging is that the employer is contributing to our national defense when they're supporting their military members. So, not only should we say that it's the law and you're, responsible for doing this, you're a patriot. You're contributing to our national defense by supporting your military member. And, maybe there's ways that we can advertise that, of course, with all of our awards, that's one way, that they can be recognized for their support, and then they can get recognition for, what they're doing for the military member. But even just in the way we present things to people, I think could be helpful. So.
Great point.
Any other questions or comment? I being relatively new in this part, not new to the Guard, but new to this kind of program, this has been very helpful to me. So I'm very appreciative. I'm sure it is to Lillian as well, and Al, because we're all kind of new. And so I appreciate that you've taken time out of your busy schedule to come talk to us.
Okay. Thank you, Sherry. When we do invite you to the Yellow Ribbon events, we will always give you time to speak. Some of our speakers are, we allow them we ask them to come and just set up a booth, an information booth, but ESGR will always be asked to give a presentation. So if we ask you, please know that we want you to speak. And we also do want all of your cards and your pamphlets and everything, because our specialists that work in our service member and family support, of course, we get the message out about, because we've got sent 5 places across the state, and soldiers know to go there. And so immediately we'll push them towards you if a soldier or a family member comes in with any kind of issue. So thank you again so much for including me in your agenda. Thank you all very, very much for the time that you dedicate and volunteer time to continue to take care of members and our families, and you are patriots also that are supporting our country.
Thanks so much, and have a good rest of the day.
Say, Sherry,
yes.
Sherry, this is Jerry. I think just in a final thought here, I think Dave's point about emphasizing that employers are part of the national defense or national security, or however you want to word it, I really think that's a good tag for us to kind of kick around and see if we ought to try to emphasize that more into the future. I think that's I think there's some real potential there to put more emphasis on that aspect of USERRA and of the participation that employers do with the overall military and national security, national defense of our country.
Thanks, Jerry. That hopefully is one of our goals, carry on that, what just started so long ago, but to try to change our focus a little bit. We have just a different mindset out there now too. So there's so many things happening. So I appreciate that. This has been really helpful. So we will still be cognizant of the time. I did text Jeanette that we may only get through depending on how long the pre-deployment slide briefing is. So if we don't have time to do both, you guys, can you be able to do the next meeting? I don't know if Mike and Don.
I'll share the briefings right now.
Okay.
The pre and the post briefings, The slides are the same, except
Oh,
there's
okay.
one last slide that talks about if you're looking for a different job. I'll pull those up, Mike and
Okay.
John, and then they can just kind of go through the slides. And then if there's anybody that has any questions or anything like that, I think this is a good group discussion about what should be talked about on each slide. So I will pull them up.
So go ahead, either whichever one of you is going to talk first. Appreciate you guys doing this. Again, that's leaning on our expertise of the group that's already involved. So thank you, Jeanette, for coordinating these speakers.
Morning. Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Well, I have a problem getting in and connected, so just bear with me a minute. I'm going to switch to my computer. I asked Janet to resend me the link, so I'm on my phone, so I don't have my readers in front of me, so bad excuse. But I'll start out with this first slide. And basically, when I'm doing presentations, I talk about the value and the intention of what ESGR is really about, and these three pillars around employee outreach, military outreach, and ombudsman services. And I've had to, my experience as a business owner and as an ESG volunteer, I've had to use and work with Jerry a number of times and see the value of what that piece brings around the services it provide around understanding and the kind of the mediation between the employer and soldier. And the employer outreach piece is so important to me. And I actually talked about it yesterday with a business owner on a whole different topic. It was around EDC and economic development, but also around that business having soldiers and the outreach piece and how important it is to have partnership. And I think about, we should have a billboard that says ESGR equals the business owner and the soldier, that then equals a strong national defense. We talked about the importance of the business owner, understanding the importance of the role as a soldier and their part in that education, and knowing how to work with and support the soldier that they have or employee, so to speak, and be as well aware as any of us to the path that they have to take each day intentionally. When I think about the conversation with the military outreach piece, and I think about how we message that with them, and many are very unclear. In fact, I've talked to a number of my employees that some are newer but are in the Guard, and we talk about you, Sarah, and we talk about their rights, and me as the owner of the business and our rights as an employer. It's interesting what they do and don't know, and sometimes it makes me wonder how that conversation goes from the military side around understanding and how we can then support their better understanding of that and having them do their homework around their rights, because we want to avoid the problems that sometimes arise and make it much more clear and seamless. And when we do all three of these things, we have a much more robust and sound path forward with the ESGR piece in general. I think it's important to, I've had soldiers walk up to me and say they really appreciate the insight of what we've learned today, and the parents along with them, or somebody that has attended an event where it's a yellow ribbon or something like that, or we're just in a SRP or something where we're there to be present and provide greater understanding. Let's see, we're on that first slide, correct? With you, Sarah, we try to go through intentionally and specifically the rights that each of the parties have. And it's amazing to me at times. I've had situations recently where one of our volunteers has called and said, I need to get a number for Jerry or somebody because I have a situation with an employer, an employee, or soldier, and there's just kind of a roadblock here. And using the information that's presented to us, whether it's handouts or information that we can share, has been extremely beneficial for a number of people that attend when we're doing our training. And, you know, without getting too deep with them and referring to the right people, I think it's important to give as much as you can without overwhelming them too at the same time. And Mike, feel free to comment if you want, as you think about it too, from your perspective as a volunteer. Any thoughts from you, Mike?
Sure. So for those who haven't met me, my full-time job is to teach. So I have absolutely no problem explaining the USERA aspect of it. I'm going to be honest, when I went through the training, it's kind of dry. When you go through and explain it to somebody, they tend to tune out. So the approach that I take is try to have some sort of a personal connection. I've deployed 4 times. On active duty side, we leave, we come back. The job part, the insurance part, it's all seamless. It doesn't change. My brother-in-law is in the Air Guard, spent 6 years in the Marine Corps, and then got out, realized he kind of missed the military, and joined the Air National Guard in North Dakota as a crash rescue firefighter. Well, he had the opportunity to go to Africa. So he works for Southern Valley down in Fairmount, left. Him and my sister and their family went on TRICARE, which was great. And when he came back, it took about a month and a half, 2 months to jump through the hoops with, I think it was Blue Cross, to get his insurance turned back on. They have 3 boys, and no one could go to the hospital because they were going to have to pay out of pocket because his insurance wasn't back on. So the way I articulate what we do for enforcing USERA and educating the service member and the employer is that the amount of stress that my sister went through based on him going to Djibouti was one aspect, and then coming back and not having everything. The employer was great. Said, hey, yeah, we'll put in the paperwork, but the amount of hoops that she had to jump through in order to get family insurance back on was insane. So my goal, at least briefing on a yellow ribbon aspect, is we should be able to help alleviate stress, not cause induced stress when they get back. If I never have to call Jerry, that means I've done my job as a volunteer, in my opinion, because I would like to facilitate the conversation between the employer and the employee, not have to have Jerry call and say, hey, you are currently in violation of federal law, and we may have to refer this over to the Department of Labor and things get worse. So we're going to have the conversation to educate both the service member that just because I could join the Army and leave for 2 years and come back and UND has to give me my job back, doesn't mean I wait until the day before I leave to tell them. So tell them early, making sure they're aware, and then I like the aspect of, hey, you're contributing to the national defense because, yes, as a service member, I would have protections under USERA, but the employer does as well. So it's facilitating that conversation on both sides. And then as ESGR volunteers, we can help facilitate the conversation before it gets to the Ombudsman or Department of Labor to help alleviate the stress associated with deploying and redeploying.
You know, I'll add a point here on USERA. I just had recently, I think you can still hear me here. Recently, I had an employee that was trying to leave work early because he was using his conversation that he's getting deployed, but actually he didn't have his orders, and the date wasn't, he had some time between the date he needed to report, and in the end, he was trying to use the National Guard as a way to get out to go drive a beat truck for somebody and find a gap in between. And so it's always interesting what you learn as you go. And he's a great employee, but I think he just had a little gray area he was working with there. But, you know, Jerry Engelman always makes sure he keeps me clear and clearly understanding the rules, which is great because it goes back to pay and it goes back to orders, I guess. So any questions on USERA piece?
I have a question. This is Jeanette. I think a lot of volunteers are kind of maybe scared to brief the slide because they feel like they have to know all the answers. And I just want to put out there that there, you have Jerry Engelman and you have Arlen Frederick,
Arlen.
that if you have any questions at all, give the service member their phone number. You don't have to know every little detail about you, Sarah. So that's what Jerry and Arlen are there for. I just wanted to bring that up.
Yeah, and I think that's an important point. And when Mike and I have done some of these events, we certainly have the cards handy for both of those names. So it's an important piece to reflect back on and refer forward. So, okay. As a business owner, I think about this quite often, and I talk to my HR team about this regularly, about advance notice to the employer, verbal or written. I've had to deal with that at times because of the lack of notice, as I maybe mentioned a little bit. And it's important that we're on the same timeline. I'm in the ag business, ag equipment business, and so certain times of the year are extremely important. And in those, first 30 days, the days of service that we know that they're going to be out, and kind of how long all of this is, just getting a greater understanding of the notice of what's going to be taking place. I have one individual who's going to be gone for a year, one that just came back. And so it's always interesting. And then it's so important because we try to plan ahead so often, and how do we fill the gap for now and then have that space ready for them as we return. So the advance notice piece really helps the employer be more engaged in the plan forward, because we know we're going to have that gap for a while. If there's anything that happens around any extensions, we've normally seen good communications and or anything around separations, what's going to take place, how and when. I think we've become accustomed enough as a business to understand the USERA really well, but just with the advice of Jerry and others to know how to move forward. Mike, any comments?
Nope, nothing else to add.
I think everybody's pretty much clear on the 1 to 181 days. It's pretty straightforward on the timeline. So as you may know, I received the Patriot Award the same day that I became a volunteer, or committed to be a volunteer with ESGR. And that was a very marked moment in my career in a way. Just a little bit, my dad served in Korea. I had two nephews that served, one in the Air Force and one in the Marines, and one lost his life in Fallujah, and other family members that have served. And I think it became a very marked moment as an employer for me to have a kind of a real life experience. And when I talk to not only employers, but soldiers, I talk about how important it is for them to think about their employer, what they're doing for them, and how much that can mean to them to really embrace ESGR and support your efforts to a greater level. And to have a soldier nominate me was an important piece, and it drove a lot more passion and intention around the work that I do. And it's great to have that on the wall and have a statement of support and everything that goes with that. And then to be able to promote even to a higher level around the above and beyond and pro patria and all of those, it's just an extension of the relationship with the business owner, and how they can be more engaged in the messaging around what we do in this business and in a soldier's life. And so I incorporate, honestly, in an event that's ESGR related, I try to tie some of that personal piece in, but I also, in my community service that I do, I actually bring it up quite often about the businesses that represent different volunteer groups or ADCs or chambers or whatever, around the importance of having more, I'll think about being more relevant in that space, because a majority of the businesses in my region have soldiers in the Guard or Reserve. And I think it's important to constantly bring that up, not only in just small talk, but sometimes in big talk too, around that relationship. And Mike and I and Jody just did a Patriot Award last week with a very small business owner. I got there a few minutes before the other two, and he confided in me that he's just never had anything like this. And this was a big deal for him. And I think he shared that with Mike and Jody also, that this is a big deal. And the soldier that is currently active is his best employee. And he can't do enough each day to kind of support those efforts. And what he's done is shared with his other employees that are taking up the slack, the value of what that soldier is doing and the value that he's going to bring back to the business when he's done with his mission, and mentor the other young technicians and so forth. So it's a big deal for him. And so it was great. And we were in a very small space, but he's going to have a lot of pride going forward each day around this event. So, and I apologize also on behalf of the Teams meeting I tried to set up. Some of you didn't get to attend, and we're going to go with Zoom in the future, but we did get some pictures. So we did get that piece done. Any questions on employee, the employer rewards or awards or statement of support? It's a very noticeable thing when you are a Patriot Award winner and you have that statement of support in your showroom or wherever it's at in a business.
John, this is Delton. I really appreciate you bringing that up because, in reality, folks, this is 80 to 90, I always say 90% of what we do in ESGR, and it all starts with that service member recognizing that employer. But you hit it on the head, and again, I wish I was on that day. But how many times have all of us seen how moved employers are by being recognized with a Patriot Award and the impact that has? And they're just thinking they're going along doing what they should have been doing all along, taking care of that service member. And that's what the high percentage of employers do, and they just think they're doing the right thing. But it is so meaningful, and it really makes being an ESGR volunteer fun. So I know I'm preaching to the choir on the call this morning, but thanks for bringing that up. I'm glad that went well, and it's just fun to do.
Well, and the example I'm talking about is a person that ventured out into a small business and starting a small business at the age of about 59. And this is the kind of pinnacle of his career. And this was one step closer to his kind of trophies on the wall for the right reasons, not just to have them, but for the right reasons. And to be able to have his own employee base was really a big deal. And this was a give back to him that he will never forget. So.
Awesome. Jeanette, awesome. I've got a question. So either John or Delton, can you explain to the new people on that you do not have to have a Patriot Award to get a statement of support? You can give statement of support out to any business. Can you talk about that?
Yeah,
go ahead, John.
The statement of support I guess I'd frame it this way: if you're engaged in this and you have a passion to be involved, specifically like with your employees that are Guard or Reserve, and you support ESGR, the goal is, and maybe possibly it becomes a Patriot Award at some point down the road by your actions and your engagement in it. But we've done statement of supports for businesses just specifically around what they do and how they support the efforts that we put forth each day. And a lot of times that's due to the fact that there's people leading those businesses that were once in the Guard or active duty, and it's just a piece that really ties close to them, and they want to be visible in every respect. And some probably want to put a billboard out on their building too, around that, which is great.
Yeah, that's a great point. They and the other side of it is that there are people out there who are true patriots, organizations, and they don't even have to have a Guard member working for them. We can do statement of supports for anyone. We just have to be proactive, go out. If you're ever doing business with somebody, I know Dave and I, we had the same mutual barber in Fargo. Dave has a lot more hair than I do, but Dave Johnson and Dave and I visited about it, and we saw that he had an old statement of support in his barbershop. But you know, I was talking to him when I was sitting in the chair one night and said, "Hey, would you like one signed by this Secretary of Defense?" And he was all over it. And so I think Dave, he did a great job doing the statement of support. I think I gave him a coin, and he was a happy camper. So keep that in mind as well. But I think there are a lot of people out there who really do support the military, don't necessarily have a guard or reservist in their as an employee, but that can really make a difference. And I'll just, you know, you guys have heard this probably a couple times from me, but John Onken is the poster child for taking advantage of when we do a statement of support or Patriot Award. In John's case, he was nominated, and that was at the very first boss lift that I ever attended as state chair. And what a fun event that was. And being the old banker that I am, I couldn't resist in asking John if after he'd received that Patriot Award and Mark Goodman presented it, I said, "Hey, would you like to consider being a volunteer?" It was the easiest sell I ever had. He didn't even hesitate. He came on board, and you know, look at John just doing great work up there in Grand Forks. So thanks for telling me yes, John, and not turning me down for being a volunteer.
Yeah, you're welcome. You know, Janet, I actually need to touch base with you after the meeting, because the business I was talking to yesterday, we talked about ESGR, and he's got a business based out of Grand Forks, but offices in Fargo also. And so I think it's a good start around the statement of support with that individual. So I'll get you that information, okay?
Perfect. I want to throw out a scenario. So I'm an ESGR volunteer, and I'm bringing this statement of support to the business. If they had a Patriot Award, but what if the employer says, "Well, I don't know who should sign this statement of support," because that's been different scenarios. Can you talk about that?
So when I delivered a statement of support to, just an example, so PS Industries, Corey Mellon is the CEO, and he's a former guard officer, and then in active duty before that. And yet the two owners are very silent people in the business. And it actually goes forward to even the boss lift that we did. Corey was going to be on it, and he actually turned it over to one of the more silent business owners, which was a great example of kind of conveying more of the messaging towards them on needing to understand what it is, and the opportunity to have one of the two owners be present there and be a part of that was important. I think it was trying to really understand, in that case with Corey, he's driving the ship, but there's these really important pieces behind the scenes as these two owners, and to have them to be part of that and engage in that says a lot more sometimes. And to kind of pass the buck a little bit in the right way to Dan or Grant as owners was an important piece to me to have that happen. And sometimes it's just kind of doing a little digger deeping about who should sign it. And honestly, if they're good with a statement of support and it's the director of HR or whatever, and that's what they want, that's an okay thing too, because they all support it in the background. So you learn a lot when you start visiting with the businesses. And the reason I know more about that business, I will just say it this way: when you have a business that gets a statement of support, there's a great opportunity for volunteerism around that conversation. And you learn real quickly that there's some people that maybe want to help Mike and I out. And I'm still working on that with Corey. And that will be an opportunity in the future, hopefully, that supports our efforts in this region. So make it into something even more than it is in that respect. You can learn a lot from them, and they can be very supportive of your efforts.
I want to be cognizant of time, so if you guys could be a little patient, and we'll continue. This is all good talking. We didn't know how long it would go overall, but thank you for your patience. Keep going.
And we can move a lot faster. You just got to give us give us a hand signal or something. So we like, Mike and I like to talk. That's probably one of those things. The bottom, so you saw the bottom line. You already kind of saw it, Sherry. Communicate, 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 and showing appreciation as a volunteer and chair. It's constantly part of our conversation with anybody that we deal with. It seems like this always comes up, and we're seen, we're heard, and we get questioned a lot as a volunteer because it's just naturally happening. When you sit in front of 100 soldiers and they come from all walks of life, I just realized the other day that my service manager in Grand Forks, his wife, is going to be playing a new role at the 188th in Grand Forks, and I didn't even know it, and I didn't even know he was married to her. So there's a lot of things that you kind of understand, but communication extends so far. It goes right down the trap line. So take each of these moments that you have as an ESGR volunteer and really cherish them, because you're doing such important work. And, you know, Delton said way on early in my time, your role is so important. You're held accountable just like a soldier because you're a volunteer within the DOD, but your work is so vital to the soldier's life and the employer's life. And so when you take it and look at it that way, it's for Mike and I. Mike served, I did not, but it's our give back to the community and the region and the national defense. So if you're intentional, it's very seen by the soldiers, it's seen by leadership, and the results will happen. Janet is a regular contact for me. Sometimes I screw up, she corrects me, and we do things to get it right? But I encourage all of you to look at who the support team is. And if you're new to this, spend some time, schedule something with Jerry or Arlen and just talk about a little bit more about their role. And it really helps you to understand the boundaries and the path that's best suited for the conversations that need to be had, or to refer something on to Jerry or Arlen that really is out of your wheelhouse. But I encourage the public and those businesses to also dig deeper into ESGR and call me back and ask the questions that they need to know about. And it is amazing how they do ask, and you can refer forward. So at least they're doing that, and they're paying more attention to what's happening in that part of their business. So any other comments, Mike?
Nope, that about covers it.
Okay.
Great job, you guys. I appreciate all of the, and I know to some of you, this may just be, oh yeah, this is what we've been doing for the last, 15, 20 years. But as a person that likes to learn all the time, I think even somebody that knows it and has lived it, it's always good to have a refresher. I take a lot of insight from all you guys' experience as well. So I appreciate you guys willing to step up to the plate and educate us on these things.
The last thing I'll just say, Sherry, is that as a new volunteer, if you are, maybe you got to think a little bit out of the box. If it's not a boss lift, what could it be? Is it lunch with this or that? Is it something you can do locally that is, do you set something up where in Grand Forks, I can look right across the road here and see basically the 188th sitting over there, and what can we do locally? And, but again, you can also go much further, like to Minot, and do something like that. And those create some obstacles, because Janet and I ran through that with a cancellation of a boss lift, and then we turn right around and we're back on like the same day. So it was kind of dicey, but yeah, there's some great results from all of that.
Thank you, guys. I want to just, and I know we're a little bit over time, but I appreciate this. I want to just give anybody just a minute or two if you have anything. There was a lot of awards that have been handed out over the last couple weeks. So if anybody wants to bring anything, I've seen a lot of the pictures and lots of emotions in those pictures, you could tell. Or if you have anything just for the good of the group, I won't go to each person individually. But if anybody has anything they would like to add before we close, that would be great.
Just two things. One, I want to talk about what several people have already mentioned this morning, making the employer understand that they are a part of national defense. Rich Braun, Stephanie, and myself did a Patriot Award at Badlands Ministries yesterday. And after it was over, I was talking with both the National Guard soldier involved and the employer, and emphasize that point. And you could just see in the employer's eyes kind of a light bulb go off, and how it kind of built him up, and he felt like he was a bigger part of things. So I really do think that's something that we can hang our hat on, if you will. Secondly, I've noticed Jeanette's been recording this, so I'm assuming we're going to be able to get a link out to people who've missed it.
I switch it over to YouTube, and then I can push it out to everybody.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, this is, can you hear me? This is Rich Braun, and we had a really good Patriot Award yesterday, and this, it was pretty amazing that this was at the Badlands Ministries in Medora, that they actually had passed a policy that compensated the soldier for his time in training and did not take that time away from his regular time off for sickness or vacation or anything like that. So pretty amazing. But I just want to pass on one little interesting note. I was a speaker at 2 Veterans Day events, and I took along some ESGR literature and put it out and made a comment in my talks that I had some ESGR literature. By golly, a lot of it left. I mean, and there was not a lot left when I got back to the table, and I passed out a lot of cards. So it's always good to carry a little bit of literature and some cards with you when you go to these events, even though it's not an ESGR presentation, because you've got a captive audience and you might as well give the ESGR a plug. And it's surprising how much of that literature is picked up by people when carried away and look at it. So that's just a tip.
Hey, Rich, can I add one thing? If they went above, basically that's what I'm leading into. It sounds like that organization is eligible for an above and beyond award. We don't need the service member to do that. They did the Patriot, and if they, extended pay or something like that, that normally, or that's part of the normal course, I think we could get more mileage yet and do an above and beyond award for that organization. So you can work with Sherry on that, and Jeanette, and we can get that done because that, if they're doing that, we don't need further direction on that. It'd be nice too if that service member would nominate that company or that organization for a potential Freedom Award, because that's one of the big things is the extra pay and benefits above and beyond what they normally would have to do, if that in fact happened. So
it seems that it did, and I think they certainly would be eligible for an above and beyond. Now that's a real small outfit in terms of it, and I'm not sure whether it's a public or whether it's a private organization in that regard. It started out as a Bible camp and a summer camp for kids, and now it serves as a meeting place for all kinds of events. But yeah, above and beyond for sure, and maybe Freedom.
Yeah. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I mean, if they're organized, they're paying people. They got somebody on the payroll. Yeah, I think it's okay. My last comment is, and I got to shut up, but I see we have a potential new recruit that was sitting on Jerry Engelman's lap there for a while. So a while ago on the screen.
Barry, I have a comment. I attended the Veterans Day program at the Heritage Center at the Capitol, and Mayor Mike Schmidt was not able to make it. And in his letter he sent, he wrote in there how important ESGR is, honoring, giving that employer a Patriot Award. And so that was really meaningful for the city of Bismarck, meaningful enough that he put it in his letter, was read on Veterans Day at the Heritage Center. So.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, I just put in the chat so everybody knows, some of you know that I'm on the road a lot and I'm hunting a lot. I'm in the field. That's my job actually, is to record different hunting events with sick kids and veterans. But anyway, it's hard for me to stay connected. I just want you to feel free, if you do an event, to just call me and tell me, because I fall behind on some of this stuff, and if you can fill me in on what just happened, in addition to the emails. I have bad connection, bad reception, I'm out in the middle of Egypt, and it's, here in whatever state I'm in. So anyway, just call me and let me know. I'll try and catch up on those as much as possible, because some things just fall through the cracks through email and stuff. So let me know. And then I just want to add quick, being a public affairs person in the military for so long, only 0.6% of the U.S. population serves in the military anymore. And my job all those years was to help the American public stay connected to the military. We lose our connection to the military. And, when I talked about contributing to the national defense, like people have been saying here, this is a way for employers to serve. I don't know if that gets said enough. You're actually, because everybody can't serve in the military. A lot of people just can't because of a lot of different issues, or they're too old, or they're business owners now, but they can serve by supporting their military members. So that's the way they're contributing to national defense. So I don't know if that gets said enough to employers. But anyway, that's enough about that. But please contact me. I'm in a hotel room today. I have internet connection right now. I'll try and get some posts done right away. And, to actually communicate, to a person who is involved is helpful to me to make a good effective post. So anyway, that's what I have to say. Sorry I took so.
No, never apologize. You always have good things to say. Does anybody else have any final comments? Just as a reminder, fill out that survey with these things that you guys have been talking about. These ideas, these are things, as we go forward and trying to continue the good work that has been done over the years. We want to, we might have to start thinking differently as the mindset keeps changing. That's just the way life is. But please write those comments down. I really like what you just said as far as turning our mindset to letting these employers know you are serving, and this is a way you can do it. And so I like that as well. Just a reminder, and thank you, Jeanette, for sending out the links and the agendas and all the great newsletter and all that. The next meeting will be December 21st for this group. And I appreciate everybody staying on a little longer. I think it was a very good meeting, and I always learn a lot from you guys. So I appreciate that.